I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. of the Baltimore City Senate delegation. For those that don't know, my name is Corey McCray, the chair of the Baltimore City Senate delegation, and welcome to our virtual weekly bill hearing. First, as we do with every tradition, just like my colleagues who are currently on this call, I'm going to start in numerical order. We have Senator Antonio from the 40th Legislative District. We have Senator Jill Carter from the 41st Legislative District. We have Senator Mary Washington from the 43rd Legislative District. We have Senator Charles Sidnor from the 44th Legislative District. And we have Senate President Bill Ferguson, who likes to be recognized as the senator from the 46th Legislative District. Today's bill hearings is a little heavier than we usually have. We'll be having 5 bill hearings today, and we'll only vote on 1 bill today. But before we get started, as tradition, I'd like to acknowledge that we are joined by one of our Baltimore City's young people at this moment, who has been selected as a page to the Maryland General Assembly. We have Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore is a senior at Western High School and a good constituent of the 40th Legislative District of Senator Hayes. I like to highlight that Ms. Moore is also joined, and we may be later joined by Malik, who's a student, is a student Senator Sidnor's alma mater, and Arian Carter's alumni of Senator Carter's alma mater. Arian, if you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself, and am I pronouncing your first name right? And if not, I apologize.
Good morning, everyone. So you did pronounce it wrong. I'm sorry. It's okay though. It's Ariane. So yes, I am a senior at Western High School. I am not only involved in this program, but I'm also involved in the Elijah Cummings Youth Program that was previously controlled by late Congressman Elijah Cummings. I am involved in varsity lacrosse and soccer. I've known to participate in numerous programs and organizations since my sophomore year to now. It's something that I like to do and involve myself. I'm a very outgoing person. I know that it's a way for me to get connections and for me to grow as a person and what I want to be closer once I get to my future, which is to be a teacher. So hopefully it does come true. And yes, that's everything about me. Thank you for having me today.
Perfect. At this moment, if we could get, I know that we usually do a couple words that's usually said by the senators. I think the Senator Ferguson is throwing a thumbs up. Would you like to start off?
Just to say thank you for being here. Keep up the great work.
Got it. I believe this Senator Washington is next.
Thanks for being with us, Ms. Moore. I went to Philadelphia High School for Girls in Philadelphia, so I know Western Doves are wonderful. That's a wonderful place to be educated. So thanks for joining us today.
I see Senator Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say Western Dove love forever. Good luck and congratulations.
And the good Senator Hayes, you jumping in here at any moment?
Absolutely. I thought I heard you say that Ms. Moore was from the 40th District. And I will tell you, the 40th District turns out some of the brightest stars. And so, Madam Moore, I'm so glad to have you join us and serve as a page. And we hope that you have a bright future and continue to contribute to the great things that Baltimore have in store for you.
Senator Sidnor, I'm not going to leave you out of this. You want to jump in here?
Well, absolutely. As Senator Carter mentioned, us folk over at Poly have all the love in the world for Western, so it's a pleasure to see you.
Perfect. And it looks like we got someone that's attempting to be the 7th senator, y'all, but he's actually our mayor. So, Mr. Mayor, you want to jump in here?
No, I was just going to say, Ms. Moore, continue to be bright. We know that Baltimore's young people are our greatest resource and that you guys are the stars that we have, so continue to shine. Perfect. And I would agree that with the senator from the 40th, that the 40th produces some of Baltimore's best.
He say that living in the 45th right now. Ms. Moore, I think that it's appropriate to say that we're all proud of your achievements, and hope that you have an impactful and positive experience as a page with us this session. We recognize that this session is unlike any other, but we do hope that you leave here with a greater understanding of how your government works and what your legislative representatives do. As you prepare to graduate and embark on a new chapter, we wish you much success. If you ever think that there's ever anything that we may be able to do to assist you in your academic or professional goals, we hope that you'll never hesitate to reach out to us, Ms. Moore. And usually Senator Hayes, the good senator from the 40th district, usually always comment and make sure that our young folks, our seniors, know about them scholarships too. So I hope that if you are attending university, college in the city of Baltimore or the state of Maryland, that you will be reaching out to all your 40th district legislative folks. And we know you know who one of them are.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chair, we look forward to hearing from Ms. Moore to make sure she get one of them scholarships. And, you know, she continue her activism, not just in the organization, but she's a perfect voter. And we love perfect voters. So thank you so very much.
Thank you all so very much. It's very touching.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. And colleagues, we'll, if Malik joins, we'll make sure that we jump in. But at this moment, we'll start to take up our bill hearings. We do have several witnesses present today. Witnesses will be 3 minutes to provide oral testimony. I, as chair, reserve the right to ask you to conclude your statements and request that you remain courteous to our senators and to those that are also watching in the virtual audience. Senator Hayes, because we're joined by the mayor, I know that numerically had it, but I just want to see if we can move over to Senate Bill 786 and take that one first, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Colleagues, at this moment, we're bringing up Senate Bill 786. I know that we're joined by our mayor, Brandon M. Scott. We're also joined by our government relations director, Natasha Mehu. We're also joined by Kaylin Young, and we also have Bob Cherry from the FOP with us at this moment. And Madam Director, you can also let me know if there's other folks that'll be joining, but I think that may be the list in the lineup. Colleagues, this bill is put on behalf in reference of the administration, Senate Bill 786. This is a bill that has been, I want to say, brought to us several times, but this is the moment where we've actually got it to where there's some form of consensus moving in one direction and in a uniform body. I'm not going to belabor the point, but it's something that's been extensively worked on. And I just want to thank our colleagues before we get started. I want to lift up our Senator Jill Carter, who's worked on this. I want to lift up Senator from the 46th District, Senator Washington, Senator Hayes, and Senator Sidnall. While we know we did the work, I think that it's important to let our folks that's listening from this virtual audience know that the Maryland State Senate, our Baltimore City Senate delegation did a lot to get this across the finish line, and we're glad to be able to work in concert with our administration to see this go across the finish line with us. At this moment, I'll give it and hand it over to our mayor, Brandon M. Scott.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you to the entire delegation, not just for your work on this bill, but on the work on behalf of the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland. As you know, this bill is about local control of BPD, and as Senator McCray, this is an item that we all have discussed for quite some time. But as my senator just laid out, we believe that this now is the moment that we're able to move this through and move it through with the level of responsibility and care needed. This bill is about accountability. It's about representative democracy. As you know, our city is the only jurisdiction in Maryland that does not directly oversee its department in its entirety. This bill will put Baltimore in the same posture as jurisdictions in Maryland and, of course, around the country. I've worked and led with some of the advocates that you see today and many of you on this issue for almost a decade now. And now we're living in a moment where we have the opportunity to make a real change in a new way. Local control paired with the statewide reform efforts that you guys are going through as a body, will go a long way to meaningful transformation. The ability to set policies and oversight locally will enable us to truly transform BPD, working with all parties and fulfill our consent decree requirements. I understand, and we've had discussions in the past about this change, and such concerns that have been raised, we think have been rendered, rectified with the way that we're moving with this bill. To address process concerns, this bill would, about the transfer of power, so to speak, this bill would establish an advisory council of key stakeholders to guide and oversee the transition. To address liability concerns, the bill clearly states that BPD will be an agency of the state for all actions up until it transfers, and then all actions to the city after that. And to ensure our residents have a voice in the matter, the transfer of control is contingent on the passage of an amendment to the Charter of Baltimore City and ratification by the voters of Baltimore. The steps provided in this bill afford the state, BPD, city government, delegation members, and all our stakeholders the time and process for guaranteeing the transfer occurs with foresight and precision. And to ensure that we put the best bill possible forward, we work with our partners and interested stakeholders to amend the bill. Additional seats on the advisory board to include the city solicitor, someone from the civilian review board, 3 members are representing the community, ex officio members from our consent decree task force, and monitoring team, and the oversight task force for us, and also an amendment that clarifies the timing. If a charter amendment is ratified 2022, then local control would take effect on January 1st, 2023. If it's ratified 2024, then it will be January 1st, 2025. Both options to ensure we get it done in a timely manner and account for any unforeseen circumstances. You never know what a pandemic or other historic event would do to throw off our timeline. And with increasing calls for police transparency and accountability, now more than ever, we know the need for this bill to pass. And for those reasons, I urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 786. And Mr. Chair would take any questions from me if there are any. You're on mute, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I'd like to bring up Madam Director Mejia, if you'd like to make any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any additional things to say. I think the mayor outlined the bill pretty thoroughly. However, I'm happy to help answer any questions that may arise from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, Mr. Young, you are favorable with amendments, correct? Mr. Young, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the delegation. My name is Kalen Young, the Director of Public Policy at the ACLU of Maryland, here in strong support with amendments of Senate Bill 786 to finally set a pathway to restore local control of the BPD to the residents of Baltimore. This is one of the 5 reforms we're pushing for as part of the Maryland Coalition for Justice, for Justice and Police Accountability. This is also a primary goal of the Campaign for Justice, Safety, and Jobs. Thank you to my Senator, Chairman McCray, for introducing this bill, my former boss and Mayor Brandon Scott for not hesitating to fulfill this campaign promise. And thank you to Senator Carter for her previous introduction of Senate Bill 1057 last session. As you know, the BPD has been a state agency since the Civil War. Additionally, until very recently, the state legislature has provided minimal oversight to the BPD. And this has contributed to what the BPD monitor, Ken Thompson, referred to as a culture of corruption. Recall he made this statement during the consent decree briefing during the Judiciary Committee in 2019. In the same briefing, then new Commissioner Mike Harrison further stated, paraphrasing, that a corrupt police force cannot reduce crime. You must first eliminate the corruption before you can see sustained crime reduction. Local control allows for the city council to be able to provide the necessary oversight that it has been, but with teeth now to hold the department accountable. The Community Oversight Task Force said that local control was needed for the full implementation of the consent decree. Local control is about racial justice, police accountability, a representative democracy, and self-determination for the people of Baltimore. Implementing local control and ensuring a robust community participation is essential to building bridges of trust between the Baltimore Police Department, its Black communities, and the residents as a whole. We're grateful to have been able to work with the mayor on a set of amendments to expand the advisory board to include more community members, to require that board to complete its final report by May 1st, 2022, and to move the charter amendment ballot question from the 2024 election to the 2022 election, and therefore transferring control from 2025 to 2023. Just as a final point, we know that if there's any issue that was on the ballot in the mayor's election, it was this one. And the people have spoken. We ask that this delegation send a favorable report. Thank you so much.
Thank you. At this moment, I'm gonna see if there are any questions from my colleagues. Seeing no questions. Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Seeing no questions at this moment, I'd like to move over to Bob Cherry. Mr. Cherry, from the FOP, you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Senator McCray and Senators, you have in front of me my written testimony, so I'm not going to go into too much of that. But I think that there were 3 things that I highlighted. I'm going to move into a 4th. The 3 first is the role of the police chief. I'm going to let Detective Perez handle that. I mentioned the loss of sovereign immunity. I think that is important. And I would caution all of the city, state senators to take into consideration that your own Department of Legislative Services has made it clear that if we do lose the sovereign immunity that exists right now for the BPD in the city of Baltimore, you're going to open up a host of direct tort claims in federal and state court where it will be passed off on us taxpayers. And look, I know this entire delegation here. You know that I've lived and worked in this city for 30 years. I live in Senator Hayes' 45th. Detective Perez lives in the 46th with Senator Ferguson. So we're not just cops here at the FOP, we're voters and we live here as well. But let me go into the 4th piece that I spoke briefly with Ms. Natasha Mayhew yesterday. I'm surprised the mayor and Natasha didn't mention that I've had conversations with the mayor's office. So let me say this. If you eliminate this as it's written right now, Senator McCray and city senators, you will be eliminating our collective bargaining agreement with the city of Baltimore. And I find that not only offensive, but I find it really a shame that the FOP here in Baltimore City were the first ones in the entire state of Maryland to put body-worn cameras on their offices. And we did that because we had a CBA with the city. And then under the leadership of Gene Ryan, we worked with the BPD. We're the first police agency to put 2 civilians on our trial boards as part of our disciplinary process. We did that under the leadership of President Mike Mancuso and the FOP and negotiating with the city of Baltimore. You know, for all practical purposes, I agree with the mayor. If you want to move it to local control, then let's do that. But where is the amendment? Where is the support for our police officers, sergeants, and lieutenants when it comes to bargaining in good faith that we have had since 1984? And Senator McCray, this is between you and me on a personal level. You and I met long before you were even a delegate or a senator. And I met you when you were an organizer with IBEW. And back then you had me support you when IBEW was under fire with a lot of the anti-labor folks in this state. And I came and answered your call. That was almost 15 years ago. I'm hoping now that you, Senator Washington, Senator Scott, Senator Hayes, and the Senate President at least ask the mayor to put an amendment forward and clean this bill up a little bit more and allow our police officers to continue to negotiate in good faith with the BPD. I know we can be held accountable because we are. And Mr. Young from the ACLU, I'm also a little tired of hearing people talk about how corrupt the BPD is. A lot of us work hard to get the job done. Just last night, to get the correct.
Can you?
I know I'll wrap up and move on.
No problem. You got a number of hands up, so I'm sure that you're going to be able to get some in from that standpoint. But I guess the first question is, Mr. Cherry, you came in opposition, and it sounds like you have amendments. Why didn't you just come in with favorable with amendments?
So the reason, Senator McCray, is I've had conversations with the FOP and the mayor's office, and right now where we stand at the FOP, and as you know, I'm only the chairman of the legislative committee. I work full-time as a homicide sergeant, so I'm unable at this point to submit any amendments on behalf of the FOP, and that's why I thought it was important that I reach out to the mayor's office, and I did. And I want to give Ms. Mayhew credit. Her and I had a great conversation yesterday, for close to 1 hour. And I reached out to Mayor Scott and asked him to call me last night so he could be a part of this conversation, because I think that it would be easier from our side if, and when I say our side, our police officers, sergeants, and lieutenants who are out there who are going to carry the water to fight violent crime that Mayor Scott made as his top priority when he ran for mayor. We want to get our cops engaged. We can't afford, another 7 years in a row, Senator McCray, of 300+ murders. You and I both agree on that. But the best way of getting that done is to send a signal to the rank and file that I want to work with you. Even the advisory board doesn't even call for a member of the FOP on it. So you have all these other community residents, but you don't want to hear from someone like me or Perez, who have almost 60 years of experience, who live in the city too and vote. I think this should come from the mayor, not the FOP.
Thank you, Mr. Cherry. But as stated, you came in opposition, not favorable with amendments, and you're here today on behalf of the FOP. And I'm under the assumption that if you're here on behalf, testifying on behalf of the FOP, that you would give the opportunity to maybe the FOP would have some form of amendments. And I look forward to that further discussion. I'm gonna move to the next question. Senator Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bob, you had mentioned, how things have been or whatever. Can you give me an idea of what collective bargaining looked like for the city in the past?
Yeah, so thank you, Senator, for that question. And again, thank you for your service. I'm honored to live and vote in the 45th and support you as my state senator.
40th, bro, 40th. That's the second time you said 45, 40th.
Senator McCray just came back into my view, so I think that's why I said 40th. So, as you know, I was vice president for the FOP for 4 years, and I was president for 6 years before I returned to the street. During my time as vice president and president, I had the opportunity to, negotiate a number of contracts under then Mayor O'Malley, then Mayor Dixon, and then Mayor Stephanie Rawlins-Blake. And I remember when you worked very closely as deputy mayor with Sheila Dixon. And during those times, we didn't always agree. But one of the things that I really like best about collective bargaining, why I do think it's important, and I would suggest to Mayor Scott that he and the mayor's office put this in here. We know that a lot of things in Title 16 need to go when it comes to local control, but at least carry over the piece that allows collective bargaining, allows the binding arbitration that teachers have, that firefighters have, that our public works workers have. Let us have that, because what it does is it keeps us at the table. It keeps Commissioner Harrison and Mike Mancuso talking about the things that Mayor Scott, you, myself, all of us who live in this city want from our police department and from our officials in City Hall. And that's really done through a collective bargaining agreement. I'm really impressed with the fact that we were the first with body-worn cameras. We were the first with putting 2 civilians on a trial board, and we did it with a collective bargaining agreement. So again, to answer your question, Senator Hayes, I think this is paramount. And again, I understand what the chairman is saying, Senator McCray, in terms of why am I here just speaking in opposition. I'm speaking in opposition right now because there is nothing in here that states that that portion of Title 16 of the public local law would be carried over, that would continue the collective bargaining that we have with our police officers, sergeants, and lieutenants. And then from there, we can work with the advisory board and help Mayor Scott with the transition to full local control after we get the referendum done with the voters of Baltimore City.
And I appreciate that, Bob. And I would, just encourage you to continue to work with the sponsor of this legislation. This has been an issue for a while. I disagree with Kaylin in that this is the issue that was on the ballot when Mayor Young got elected. I think the talent that our new mayor brings to the table and his commitment to Baltimore and the whole other package of things is what's led to him leading our city. He's a phenomenal leader. But this is an issue that was, in that conversation. And it's been a conversation that's going on for a while. I think the legislation that the chairman has put before us is definitely, a really solid piece of legislation, taking into account all the things to be studied. I would just encourage you to continue to have conversation with the administration and with the sponsor of the bill as this proceeds. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the testimony of all parties. I want to echo the sentiments of my colleague, Senator Hayes. And I've sort of had, on this particular issue, I've sort of been a bit agnostic in the sense that I don't know what it actually does at the end of the day. And I think that was my biggest concern, was that it just was unclear to me what the impacts were. And I just want to commend the mayors and the mayor's administration for kind of setting up a process that would help to answer questions about what this would do. I think that's been the biggest thing are there financial impacts? Is it sovereign immunity impacts? And so I think that this approach is a much more thoughtful approach to figuring out, what exactly does this legal change mean? It's something that happened in the middle of the Civil War. So we're talking about a change that's, 160 years of that. Just all the intricacies of legal opinion. So I really do appreciate this legislation. Mr. Chair, if you could answer, I'm still trying to understand this Title 16 issue. The bill just changes state of Maryland to city of Baltimore. I don't think it repeals anything in the public local laws. Can you help me out? Why do you think that it has something to do with the collective bargaining right?
Well, I think the key to that, Mr. President, is if we move to move the control of BPD from the state to the city, you have to eliminate Title 16, Subtitle 16 of the public local law. And as Mayor Scott stated, this is a charter amendment, so we'd have to put it to a referendum, which means then you'd be really starting from scratch. So the purpose of the mayor's, at least how I read his bill, House Senate bill and House bill, the cross file, is that the advisory board would help the administration in terms of crafting how the BPD would be, set up, and in Title 16, and I know it's all here, it's about maybe 50 pages. And inside of there is things from like promotion, for instance. Right now, there's what we call the Rule of 5, that only allows the police commissioner to skip no more than 5 people on the civil service promotional list. Well, if you do away with Title 16, that won't exist anymore, which means the city council would have to start from scratch. Do we go from a Rule of 5 to a Rule of 10 or a Rule of 20, and give the commissioner that much power just to skip everything that we have when it comes to promotions? Do we lose the binding arbitration that we obtained through many years of working with Senator Hayes and Mayor Dixon and Deputy Mayor Thomas Scuddy and Mayor Rollins Blade? That again keeps us at the table. Since we got that, by the way, Mr. President and Senator Hayes, you'd like to hear this, we've never done a one binding arbitration. And that's because I think the FOP knows it's important to stay with the city at the table in negotiations. Look, we know the city doesn't have any money. I'm a taxpayer, Eric's a taxpayer. So we get that. It's working. But again, if you eliminate, Subtitle 16 of the PLL, this would not only, we would lose our sovereign immunity in state and federal court, which could potentially increase our liability for direct tort claims. But more important, all of the language in Title 16 would be gone. And as you rightfully say, this has been around since 1860. A lot of it needs to go. 50 pages. When I was talking to Ms. Mayhew yesterday, I think there's only a small portion that I think would make sense to carry over. And again, I wish I was involved in these discussions earlier with the mayor and the administration, but I didn't realize, that these were happening. And, so anyways, again, that's why we're bringing it up now. And there is some concern. And the biggest concern, again, I have is at a time right now when police are under fire from all angles. And again, for someone like me who's been a cop for 28 years and takes pride in never calling him sick ever in 28 years, and where I can still take the stand, Mr. Young, and raise my right hand, and I'm not accused of being corrupt or dishonest, but still put people away who do murder, I think that's important for the rank and file to know that the mayor has their back and is at least going to carry over their collective bargaining agreement that is written inside of Subtitle 16 of the public local law.
Understood. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question, Ms. Mayhew?
Please.
This is a sort of a drafting, it's a drafting question. So in the bill, it says that it's repealing and reenacting with amendments, Title 16 from the bill as it was offered by the administration. Is it your sense that Title 16 gets repealed with this and it's only 16.2 and 16.3 that would be replaced? Or?
Yeah, so as I had discussed in a conversation with Mr. Cherry yesterday, the intent of the bill was to put together this advisory board in order to have a thoughtful and considerate process over how the BPD would be structured and all the processes that would be in place under a change of local control. There was not an intent on our end to pick and choose parts of any of the public local laws to change collective bargaining or other issues in advance of going through a process with the advisory board. So this bill is not intended to address Title 16 and all the various things under it. What it is intended to do is put forth a process where there are multiple people at the table in order to guide how things would be restructured under the move to local control, and not to address any of those specifics in advance.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions from my colleagues at this moment, just one comment before we close the hearing for Senate Bill 786. Mr. Cherry, while there has been a conversation, I haven't gotten anything formally in reference to amendment. So at the appropriate time when you do have authority to discuss amendments and send something formally, I think that it would be more appropriate. And I say that just respectfully that this bill will be on the voting list next week. So while it's been introduced for several weeks and we haven't gotten anything formally from the FOP and you don't have authorization at this moment to do amendments, I think that it will be forthcoming and advantageous to not slow this bill down and that you would offer up the amendments, because we do have a process that we have to go through with DLS to get the amendments drafted in the appropriate time. So whoever it is that you have to talk to with the FOP, I just would advise, in order to get incorporated and to see if my colleagues are amenable to those, I think it would be advantageous to get that done. After that comment, that closes the bill hearing for Senate Bill 786. Senator Hayes, we're going to start moving on to your bills, and thank you for this opportunity to get 786 done, but we'll move on to Senate Bill 752.
Okay, excellent. Senate Bill 752, relative simple piece of legislation. It shifts the rule of 5 to the rule of 20. I believe, did Michelle disappear? Oh, there she is. She's Jeff Strada right now, but she's going, Michelle Wurzberger, who's the legislative person for Baltimore City Police Department, will be presenting and introducing the other panelists on why this is a added advantage for the administration of the police department.
Thank you, Senator. For the record, I am Michelle Wurzberger, not Jeff Stauder, Director of Government Affairs for the Baltimore Police Department. Some of you may know him, Eric Melanson. He is our Chief of Staff for the department, and he is going to speak to this bill.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Senators. I appreciate this opportunity to speak before you today. The Senate bill before you on the Rule of 20 is a direct result of our consent decree mandates on how we are managing promotions in our department. The consent decree mandates pretty much talk about ensuring that we're prioritizing promotions and that we are working towards close and effective supervision in a way that ensures that the highest quality candidates are the ones that are selected and prioritized for the ranks of sergeants, lieutenants, but also majors and captains. We've also adopted new policies when it comes to our sworn command level selection process. And this is a companion to that in our policies that have just been updated and approved by our consent decree monitors. What this does is that allows for greater flexibility to prioritize folks on the list, but it also helps us ensure that we are looking at a candidate holistically and not just by a score on a standardized testing process. What this bill is designed to do is to give the department flexibility to look further down the list than just the top 5 members. And that's important because we've had real situations where we've had a number of candidates that are found to have significant concerns by the department before we would grant them a promotional opportunity. What that does is, we are accumulating candidates on a list of 5 members, 4 of which might have something just fundamentally disqualifying and unsuitable for their upcoming promotion. That removes all of our flexibility and forces us to choose the 5th person on the list every single time. And therefore, it brings us out of compliance with the consent decree's mandate to prioritize promotions. Giving us the flexibility to expand to a rule of 20 will allow us to give that holistic approach, look at every candidate on not just their performance on the test and that standardized testing process, but to also look at all the accomplishments, all of the achievements, all of the awards, the commendations, the kinds of assignments that they've been in, and a holistic review to be able to prioritize those members for promotion, but within reason. That's why we're not looking at the entire list. The rule of 20 will allow us that greater flexibility. This bill also provides us with the option to strike members that are subject to termination. And again, those are members that we would normally accumulate in the rule of 5. And we've had, actual instances of this occurring. So this is not a theoretical exercise. This is something that we have confronted in the 2 years that I've been here and the commissioner's been here in trying to make sure that we're prioritizing the best of the best instead of just looking at the least worst option when it comes to our promotional process. And so I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee, but we feel that this creates a better, more accountable department. It helps us prioritize folks that are most ready for the ranks of supervision and management within our department. And so we feel this is an important step forward in enhancing the quality of supervision in our department. And we thank the senator for really helping us out with this to be able to put it as a priority for the department.
Thank you. I'm going to see if there's any questions from my colleagues, but I know that I do have a couple questions, and I believe that it's appropriate to ask Mr. Melicon the questions. While it sounds like 5 isn't the number and you've made the case, how do we get to 20 and how do we know that 20 is the number?
Well, again, part of what we want to make sure of is that we are considering the top side of the list. For instance, our recent sergeant promotional list just came out this past week, and there's about 80 members on it. And so a rule of 20 would ascribe the first 25% of the list for prioritization. And so that number is based on a sufficient number to look at in priority that does give considered weight of the performance on the test. Because if there was no rule, if there was just anywhere on the list, then the test would matter less. And for us, that's not the department's position. We want to make sure we're prioritizing the test, but still giving ourselves flexibility that's sufficient to look down the list.
And just to be clear, you wouldn't have been able to do that with 7, 10, 12, 15?
A lower number might be sufficient. We could certainly discuss what the impact of that could be, but certainly 5 or even 7 would be very restrictive for us. It continues to provide us, again, not a theoretical exercise, but an actual circumstance where we were no longer able to prioritize anyone, simply picking the least worst option available to us. So it really needs to be greater than, say, 10 or 15, but again, that's something we can discuss.
The next question that I would ask, some would say that this would give sole authority now in reference to moving up the promotion list to the commissioner.
Well, that's not true because we've developed a policy that's very clear, and that policy has now been approved by our consent decree monitors, and that creates a promotional committee. The commissioner is only receiving those recommendations from that committee, and that is bound by policy now. And so for us to undo that, we would have to go back through the consent decree monitors and back through the DOJ, who've already approved and enshrined that new policy, and that's being used now for the new list. And so for us, that would be very difficult for the commissioner to override the recommendations of the promotional committee and still be in compliance with our consent decree.
Got it. I'm going to move more towards a diversity question at this moment. That with the rule of 5, and I don't know why this was instituted in years ago, when we think about gender diversity, when we think about ethnicity diversity, those opportunities will come to those folks that are respectfully on that list and at that number, and with more discretion for the commissioner, even though that committee is there at that moment, you still have 20 to decide from versus the 5. What would you say to anyone that made that comment?
Well, I think it's
Mr. Chairman, I know Eric want to answer this, but this is what actually attracted me to the bill. I think we both share the passion to make sure that we have a police department that's representative of the citizens that it serves and have the diversity that it allows for. With the rule of five, and as Bob Cherry from FOP alluded to years ago, used to negotiate on behalf of the city of Baltimore with the FOP in those cases. And a lot of times the department was really limited in the flexibility that they could do promotions and looking at a more diverse, more talented list of people. And so what really attracted me to tackling this issue was the opportunity that it provides for a more diversified police department that represent the city that they would serve. But Eric, if you wanted to.
No, Senator Hayes is absolutely correct. This gives us greater flexibility in being able to ensure that we've got the right kind of equity goals being met for our department. Standardized testing processes. I can go on and on about, disproportionate impacts, but you guys already know that information. For us, again, this provides a flexibility that lets us look at a holistic review of the kind of supervisors we want to bring up to the department, making sure they're qualified, but also making sure that we are considering at least the option, which again, Rule 5 really limits our options on our ability to be able to create a diverse supervisory workforce. And that's an important goal for us. And again, for the consent decree compliance side.
Can I just weigh in just
Please.
briefly? We, I don't know if many of you know, but BPD has hired an equity officer whose sole job is to look at our policies and our procedures to make sure that we are proceeding with an equity lens. He is one of the members on this committee to do just what you're asking, Senator.
Yes.
Thank you. And I think that I want to lead with a comment that I think is the elephant in the room. This bill would give, obviously we have a process. We have the promotional committee. But when we look at our city and the makeup of our city in reference to being 60% African-American, and we look at the top leadership that's making decisions in reference to our Baltimore City Police Department, while I applaud the commissioner on a number of things, our top leadership is not reflective. And I'm talking about the top 6, the top folks that are there is not reflective of what the city looks like. So when we talk about giving the commissioner more discretion in reference to these issues, I think that it's very important that all bodies that make decisions for our state, for our Senate, for what we put forward should look reflective of the people that they're representing. And I just want to put that out there because I know that a number of my constituents have brought that up. I know that a number of our police officers from the Vanguard have brought that up. But it's not something that was said today, and I thought that it was just important to say.
If I could, Senator, just briefly provide an additional remark, and that is, in order for us to ensure that exact goal, Senator McCray, we got to make sure that we're promoting a diverse sergeant's corps, lieutenant corps, captain's corps, major's corps to be able to get to that level. And so that is exactly what we feel this helps us do. And so, this bill gives us that ability to look beyond just a simple score on a test and be restricted by only 5 members looking at it. It helps us build out those diversity goals. And again, as Michelle has mentioned, our equity officer is involved in every one of these committee promotional processes. And, it's very important that we develop that equity plan for us, and that we're actually working on that now. I'll give you a sneak preview of it later. But for us, it's an important part of this. Promotions, upward mobility, making sure folks have a chance. That's what we're talking about. And that's exactly in line with the goals that you just mentioned.
Thank you. Is it any questions from my other colleagues? Seeing no further questions, this ends the bill hearing for Senate Bill 752. Thank you, Mr. Melicon, and thank you, Director.
If you don't mind, I have to correct you. It's Melanson.
Oh, wow, I was way off.
No worries. And since I got all the senators on at the same time, it's Cajun and it's Cajun French. But I just wanted to just put a plug.
Melanson, I got
Melanson, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I didn't even take a try because I knew I would have butchered. Hey, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I'm about to move on, but I do want to let the committee know that there will be a technical amendment that's submitted only to add I think it's the civilian review or something like that, but there's a technical amendment that will be circulated to all of the senators prior to us voting next week.
Thank you, Senator Hayes.
Yes, sir.
Seeing no further comments, thank you, Madam Director. Thank you, Mr. Melasan, for your testimony today and good conversation. That closes the bill hearing for Senate Bill 752. I'm going to move on to Senate Bill 755, Senator Hayes. I don't believe that you have any witnesses for this, but.
No, sir. And this should be really, really quickly. I would have loved the opportunity to share a map that shows the correlation, but Senate Bill.
Do you want me to share screen or?
Yeah, if we could do that, that would be fantastic.
Okay, I'm going to make a co-host.
Yeah, I would love to do that. That would be the man.
Senator Hayes, you up?
Okay. Excellent. And here it would be my map. So I would just go ahead and share my screen here. And throw it right here. So are you all able to see that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
The map. And so if you look at this is my legislative district in the 40th district. And on this map, the little blue circles represent liquor establishments. The yellow crosses represent shootings, and the red represent homicides that have happened in the 40th legislative district over the last 2 years in 2019 and 20. As you look at this map, it breaks your heart tremendously. But if you look, there are these clusters like along North Avenue, right around Coppin State University, down here in the southwest area that borders the 41st district, and then up in the Park Heights area, right at the top. And so, you know, I'm not sure how many that are on the phone or this is another look at it from 2019. And then we're gonna go to 2020. But the map that we were just looking at just now includes both 2019 and 2020. For those of you who have not had a chance to read the book, Bleeding Now, it identifies a direct, you know, we already have a lot of information about the correlation of drugs and violence in our community, but Bleeding Now really speaks to the correlation between alcohol and violence in communities, and especially urban communities throughout our city. And so what Senate Bill 775 aims to do is limit the hours in which these establishments would make alcohol available in our community. And we're not, the bill is drafted, includes the entirety of the 40th district. We have circulated some amendments to you all. The amendments are inscribed in, Amendment 236719. And they've been circulated to everyone, and hopefully you have a chance to review them by next week. But instead of doing the entirety of the 40th district and limiting their hours from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., we're looking at 3 cluster areas, and those are the cluster areas of Park Heights, right along here in North Avenue, where you have this huge concentration, and down here in the southwest area, which borders the 44th district. Which leads me to the next part. I've talked to my colleague, Senator Sidnor, and we've been talking to Chief of Patrol Worley about the Tri-District. The Tri-District area in Baltimore City is probably one of the most deadliest areas in our city. And they call it the Tri-District simply because there's 3 different police districts that intersect at one corner in Southwest Baltimore. You have Southern District, Western District, and Southwest District all converge on this one corner. It's the same intersection where I think just a year or 2 ago, one of the federal law enforcement officers was shot in this area. And so we work with the 44th District to incorporate the portions that's right across the street from the 40th that we're trying to attack in that area and limit those hours. And so the crux of this bill is 1, to limit hours in 3 targeted areas throughout the district from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. In addition to the limiting of the hours, this bill also incorporates the creation of 2 C licenses, 2 nonprofit licenses for the KYCC, which is a community organization, as well as the Carrot Art Gallery on Howard Street. There's one, given the amendments that you have, there's one slight change that we'll make, and we'll recirculate the amendments. Instead of we're requiring the creation of these two new nonprofit licenses to have a executed MOU with the community associations. In the case of Current Art Gallery, which is located in the 400 block of North Howard Street, as opposed to Mount Vernon Belvedere Community Association, the appropriate community organization boundaries actually lies with the downtown partnership. And so we will be making that change and resubmitting these amendments to you all very, very soon. But we just ask that the legislators here support our efforts to address in some way the crime and violence that's going on here by, giving us an opportunity to, instead of having the police department focus on a lot of other things, really focus on, what we have here. We've also reached out to, and I give credit to, several legislators before us, including yourself, Mr. Chairman, who have offered this up as an idea in our districts to really, try to deal with the crime and stuff in the area. We've reached out to 2 academic institutions in the area, University of Maryland and Johns Hopkins, who will be working with us on developing some evaluation to see what impact these early closures will have on those communities. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I urge a favorable report as we, for next week, as we go into our legislative session. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of anyone from the committee? Senator Hayes, seeing no questions, this ends the bill hearing for Senate Bill 755. At this moment, we'll go on to Senate Bill 783, Baltimore City West North Avenue Development Authority.
Excellent. And Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to explain it. Dr. Rodwell, who joined us from Coppin Heights CDC, has been on for a while as a community representative. I didn't realize we would go so long today, so I probably will only be on here for 10 or 15 minutes at the most. I want to have him tell a little bit about what Coppin Heights CDC is doing, and then I'll give the overall overview of the bill.
Right. Thank you, Senator Hayes, Mr. Chair, and members of the Senate delegation and others who are present. I think that the opportunity to talk about this bill for the revitalization plan along West North Avenue is appropriate after the senator just made his presentation about the closing of liquor stores and the unfortunate numbers of fatal incidents that occur along North Avenue. And so I am the executive director of the Coppin Heights Community Association, which is a CDC that is composed of 15 neighborhood organizations and 15 faith-based institutions. Our catchment area is to the west on North Avenue, beginning at Hilton Street, then to the east, Fulton, and to the north, Liberty Heights, and to the south, Route 40. We represent over 44,000 families. We've been incorporated since 1995, originally being the CDC for Coppin State University. In 2014, we separated and became a independent 501c3. We still work closely with Coppin State University. I indeed was vice president there for 5 years while being the executive director of the CDC. And the CDC and Coppin State University realized that in order to make the type of development impact that our community and our board members wanted to see take place, we had to separate so that the rules of the University of Maryland system would not constrain us. And so subsequent to that separation, we are now engaged in over about $100 million worth of development work in the neighborhood, including 2 signature projects. One, the Hebrew Orphan Asylum, in which we purchased the old Lutheran hospital that was built in 1873 and had been vacant for 30 years. We renovated that building and turned it into a medical office building. Baltimore City Health Department now occupies that building as the master tenant. On the first floor on the ground floor is the Maryland Stabilization Center, which is an opioid crisis center. And we've recently completed the second and third floor of a COVID-19 response center for the Baltimore City Health Department. Within the next 60 days, we will complete the testing facility on the first floor. Our other signature project lies along West North Avenue, immediately next to Coppin State University. It is the Walbrook Mill apartment complex, where many of you know the old Walbrook lumber mill used to be. We bought that 5.2 acre site, demolished the lumber mill, and now have an affordable apartment of 65 families, and about to open a food hall immediately under that. BB&T Bank is there. We relocated that there, and we have a food hall that will sponsor 7 vendors of food and drink in the food and a cafe in that building. So, Senator, if you want to go on and talk about the bill, and then I can tell you why we along the West North Avenue corridor think that this is a bill worth supporting.
Right, absolutely. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence this morning. And thank you, Dr. Rodwell, for sharing. The map that I showed you in reference to the homicides and shootings is one, that is the motivation behind a series of bills that I'm introducing this legislative session, really to uplift those communities in West Baltimore, right? And so we know that closing liquor stores early is not going to solve the problem. And not even having a development authority will solve the problem. Or the Live Near Your School program that we're doing with Coppin State University in mind, where students will be able to live in that neighborhood, will solve the problem. But it's a combination of things that have happened. A lot of the success of Coppin Heights CDC, Druid Heights CDC, and the other organizations along West North Avenue are as a result of the commitment that this legislature has made in community development, whether it be Bernie, whether it be CORE, whether it be community legacy money. This legislature, and although our governor typically takes credit for a lot of these things, it was this legislature who recognized the devastation and the desperation that the uprising in 2015 after the death of Freddie Gray provided in our community. And we stepped up as a legislature to really give focus to how we could better elevate communities and give them the tools that they need as far as development. And so Senate Bill 783, the Baltimore City West North Avenue Development Authority, gives us an opportunity to really prioritize that stretch of North Avenue from Hilton to 83, and to really focus on that area to bring an overall vision. Dr. Rodwell and his organization, Coppin Heights CDC, is doing extraordinary work, but that's in one section of West North Avenue. You also have phenomenal, and they're working with other organizations like Greater Mondawmin, and they have a grammar plan, a master plan for their communities. Next door to them, you have Druid Heights, you have Penn North Community, who has a master plan that is somewhat updated, needs to be updated. And things are going on working with the planning department. And then you have Druid Heights, and you have Bolton Hill and Redsford Hill. What this development authority aims to do is to link all of that together, not coming down and telling each of these organizations what they could do, but provide linkages that are seamless from building off of the strength and the input that they've already received from the communities that they represent, to build a cohesive vision for West North Avenue that we all could be proud of, that provides opportunity and safety for a lot of the residents along West North Avenue. And what greater gift do we have as leveraging a state institution in Coppin State University to do that? And so as you look at the membership of this development authority, it includes Coppin State University, Maryland Institute of College Arts at the other end, representatives from the mayor's office, city council, and all of the various agencies that provide the various funding sources that would contribute to uplifting West North Avenue. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I want to pause because I know we've gone on for some time, but I want to pause for a minute to see if there's any questions from yourself or any of our colleagues.
Thank you, Senator Hayes. And I have no questions. Just want to see if there are any questions by my other colleagues. Seeing no questions at this moment, Senator Hayes.
Okay. All right. Well, Gary, I don't know if you want to very, very quickly add something else, but it seems like we're pretty much done here. But, thank you for coming and presenting this morning. Did you want to add anything else, Gary?
No, I don't want to be redundant, Senator. I think that you have made the case compellingly. I just want to thank you and the other senators for the very idea of looking at West North Avenue. It certainly gives us encouragement that we are now looking at that in a comprehensive way, which we definitely believe will lead towards resources, which is the key.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rodwell, Senator Hayes, just want to say thank you for everything that you all do for West Baltimore and Baltimore City as a whole, because we know that we're one Baltimore. And thank you for Senate Bill 783. At this moment, just close the bill hearing for 783. And we have one last bill hearing, colleagues. This is Senate Bill 789. Thank you, Dr. Rodwell. We have Senate Bill 789. I will not belabor the point. I will go straight to Madam Director Natasha Mehu in reference to Visit Baltimore, just in reference to time's sake.
Thank you, Chair. Natasha Mayhew here on behalf of the Mayor's Office of Government Relations, here in support of Senate Bill 789. Visit Baltimore serves as Baltimore's destination marketing organization, and it's charged with promoting Baltimore City to the world, helping to generate the economic benefits that come with tourism. Unfortunately, the tourism industry has been devastated due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this has led to job losses, reduced wages and salaries, and budget cuts. As such, Visit Baltimore and the city administration have been working to explore options for easing the impacts of these extreme fluctuations in tourism that could have on the agency's funding. So what this bill will do is shift the funding calculation for Visit Baltimore from a one-year projected receipts model to a 3-year rolling average. So under the current funding process, Visit Baltimore receives the allocation of 1-year projected receipts of the hotel occupancy tax. And then once audited, any overage or shortfall is either paid to Visit Baltimore or to the city 2 fiscal years after collection. Essentially, this process subjects Visit Baltimore's budget to wild swings, which would be mitigated under a 3-year rolling average model. So as not to disrupt current budgeting and projections, there is a sponsor amendment for the bill to take effect in 2023, but we urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 789. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from our colleagues? Senator Hayes, I saw you come.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the actual bill, but I know there's a couple of other like major economic development things that's going on in the city. Last year we had Pimlico racetrack and Laurel. I think there's some discussion going on as it relates to like sports betting and other things. Maybe not now, but at some point, I'd like to, if we could get an idea with this delegation of how they all kind of link together and what like our position. I'm not expecting that obviously today because it's the first time I ever talked to you about it. But if we could get an idea of how we link all of the different opportunities to really, make Baltimore the, next century great city that it should be, it would be awesome. But thank you for presenting on this piece of legislation today.
Thank you. And we'd be happy to arrange a briefing for the delegation on those sports betting and other economic development bills out there right now.
Thank you. Looks like there are no further questions on Senate Bill 789. So I'd like to close the hearing for Senate Bill 789. And colleagues, at this moment, I would like to move it over to voting. There's only one bill at this moment for the voting list. It's Senate Bill 525. Senate Bill 525, I'm going to explain what it did, and there are amendments that was emailed out on Wednesday in the packet of what Senate Bill 525 will do at this moment, and I will also explain those amendments. What Senate Bill 525 did at its introduction was it would have placed the early voting center at the Baltimore City Intake Center, which is our Baltimore City Central Bookings, our pre-release center. It would have did that in conjunction with the Department of Public Safety, State Board of Elections, our local Board of Elections. And direct to me, you may get questions you may want to pop on the screen, but you may not. What the amendments do is work with the administration, our local Board of Elections, our State Board of Elections, to not move as far as I wanted it to go with the early voting center, but place a drop box at that location in future elections. This drop box will be monitored 24/7, similar to every other drop that's placed by a respectful camera. I know that Senator Washington will be jumping back on, but one of the things that she also stated was that the Committee of Jurisdiction over Elections is EHE and Ways and Means. So also not just asking for the drop box to be placed, but actually making sure that inside of that drop boxes that the ballots could be accepted, voter registration forms could be accepted, or other election-related materials would be accepted from that. The three agencies in conjunction would have to report back out to the Budget and Tax Committee and EHE, and also Appropriations and Ways and Means in respects of how the utilization of the Dropbox, the days that they put the Dropbox there, the hours, and any other type of information that was necessary, and the State Board of Elections will be the ones presenting that respective report back. At this moment, I just want to see if there are any questions from my colleagues on the bill or the amendment. Yes, sir. Senator Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we heard the bill last week, I know the Board of Elections in Baltimore City expressed concerns about how much it will cost. And in a fiscal note, it says that there'll be some increases for Baltimore City. I'm assuming because we have, Natasha. Let me just ask instead of making assumptions.
Just
who's
for
going to
clarity.
pay? Where does the money come from?
Yep. Just for clarity, it was heard 3 weeks ago. So there was some back and forth getting to the place that we're in. So it wasn't heard last week, Senator Hayes. It was heard 3 weeks ago.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So I don't have the very specifics on exactly where the money itself comes from, but we did work with the sponsor, and I know these amendments do mitigate our cost concerns. Having an early voting center at the jail was extremely costly, as an early voting center is over $100,000 in costs. This is significantly more affordable and able for the city to handle in terms of having a drop box, and it still ensures that the inmates detained at the central booking facility would have that opportunity to exercise their right to vote. And as the sponsor mentioned, there would also be other materials there so that they're also educated on their voting opportunities. So we are supportive of the bill with the amendments.
Gotcha. And is there other expenses, or what will be the state's kind of obligation to this? I guess, Senator McCray, you probably might know better. What will be the state's obligation to see this through? I know as a lot of the drop boxes, we had the Board of Elections hire security. Obviously, if we have a drop box inside the facility, they have already law enforcement there. So have we gotten any pushback from corrections or other people that they would have to be responsible for this, or would we still leave it up to the Board of Elections to securing these drop boxes?
Nah, great question, Senator Hayes, and I'm going to hit a couple of different points. So first, this was even the amendment was talked with Department of Public Safety, Chief of Staff over there, Linda Lamone, State Board of Elections, and Armstead Jones, the local Board of Elections. So as stated, the cost would drop dramatically because the public safety said that it would be about $300,000 to kind of move around and staff that they needed in order to do this, and I guess make it secure from that facility. It's important to note that when you said that Baltimore City placed security guards, so that was extra that they did. You'll see that other jurisdictions had video cameras or different measures. So it says that the ballot box or the drop box has to be monitored 24/7, but it's up to that jurisdictions to choose the method of monitoring it. So we wouldn't have to have a security guard or someone standing at the respective drop box. Is some form of monitorization has to happen from that point. So that obviously lowers costs. From a cost standpoint, the cost that I believe that would be bared is obviously the drop box in reference to the time frame that the drop box will be procured for, and also the people that will have to pick up the respective information. So obviously the local Board of Elections that you asked is in reference to like, what's the cost of the State Board of Elections? Their costs will be more or less the reporting out back to the committees in reference to this was handled, the utilization and things of that nature. Outside of that, they accrue no costs.
Right. And with the Board of Elections, do you pick it up or does the city pick that up?
So the local Board of Elections actually handles the pickup and the information and things of that nature. But I also should have mentioned that the State Board of Elections said that this is probably more preferred. So when
I like it.
What they did was they had to do return envelopes and they put stamps on the respective envelopes. And so that was a cost that the state obviously bared when utilizing the respectful facility. But this also made sure that they're also not having to deal with the mail system. We know that in the mail system, when folks return their absentee ballots, that it may have made it there, it may not have made it there, or it may have made it there in an untimely manner. And they thought because drop boxes picked up every day that this is probably a better approach to moving in that direction too. That was the feedback that I got from the State Board of Elections.
No, this is huge. Love the idea. Now, the only other question that I have, and maybe it's like just pure self-interest. So if persons behind the bar, behind the walls are going to get, participate in the process, and as individuals that seeking out, how do they get the information about the election and who to vote for or whatever, like we do for people that are out in the community? How does that happen?
So
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, kind of. So that always had went on. So you had the League of Women Voters, who typically have always went into our respective facilities to kind of make sure that they had the voting information and things of that nature. But they have a list. So Department of Public Safety, and I'm not sure if you noticed, so this is a good education.
I don't.
Department of Public Safety actually puts together a list immediately after the voter registration deadline happens. So I knew that there were 700 people at our respective facility, at this facility that we're trying to innate new action with at the moment. And you kind of have that, the State Board of Elections has that information of those 700 folks that were there, but they received mail similar to how me and you receive mail, just in general. And I'm sure you already knew that piece too.
Yeah, got it. Okay. No, very helpful. And I love this idea. I don't have any questions. I would love to move it if
I got a question from Senator Ferguson before we take any action.
Yeah.
Senator Ferguson.
Just want to move the amendment.
Stole my shine.
Senator Ferguson moves the amendment. Is there a second, Senator Hayes?
Second.
Thank you. The amendment's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the respectful amendment, I just want to let our colleagues' audio kick in. Is there all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
The Senate Bill 525?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any questions on the amendment? The amendment is favorable. Is there another motion?
Move the bill as amended.
Move the bill as amended.
Negotiating a good compromise on this one.
Yes, sir. Senator Washington has moved. It's been seconded by Senator Ferguson. All those in favor, Senate Bill 525 as amended?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? The Senate Bill 525 as amended has passed. Colleagues, this now brings to the moment of we've done our hearings, we've done our voting, we've had the longest delegation hearing that we've had thus far. But before we leave, just want to see if there are any senators that has anything under the good of the Senate delegation that they just like to bring up. Seeing nothing at this. Senator Hayes.
Can you remind us about Monday? I thought I saw an email that it was canceled.
Yep, and that's a great point. So just for those, the listening audience, we usually have our grassroots briefings, and we were going to have it at that time with our health director, Dr. DeRaza. We were going to have it with MDH, Dr. Chan, and a couple of our medical institutions. Everyone knows that there's very important work going on in the Senate body at this moment around police accountability. So I'm glad that you brought it up, Senator Hayes, because this is the first one that we have counseled. So this Monday at 6 p.m. will be counseled, and we will pick that up. We're trying to reschedule that for March 15th is what we were trying to do, just to kind of make sure vaccinations and testing has been a number of the phone calls, the emails that we all have received, and just wanted to make sure that we prioritize that conversation, but it still will happen. We just have to have it at a later date because of the business that we have to handle on the floor. Thank you. Is there anything else under the good of the City Senate delegation that anyone wanted to ask or bring up?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Looks like the motion has been moved. Seconded. We are now adjourned at 10:20 a.m. Thank you all.